Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
It's our News Watch unit for today. And today we got a couple of news stories we're going to talk about. Of course, you might be wondering how to improve your English. You've probably asked your English teacher this question before. Teacher, how can I improve my English? Well, maybe you could study with a native speaker like us or something like that. Or if you're in Japan, maybe you might consider studying with a robot. That's one of our stories today. And we're also going to be talking about something called a floating farm in the Netherlands.
Yeah, it's a farm that's going to be out in the harbor, and they're going to have 40 dairy cows out there. And again, this story has something to do with AI. The robots there will be milking the cows. Very interesting. I think we're going to see more and more robots. Yeah, it's kind of scary. A little bit scary to me.
Gotta watch out because the job you're training for now may disappear in as soon as 10 years because of AI.
Oh, it could, but I'm not afraid of that so much as the robots taking control of the world.
Oh, yeah, you better watch out for that. That's probably stuff made of science fiction, though. I'd be more concerned about what kind of jobs these robots are going to take away from us.
That'll happen first, yeah.
Especially the first story here, because we're basically English teachers here. My goodness, what if those robots take our jobs away from us? What if in the future this program is hosted by a couple of robots? You might prefer them over us, and we'll have to, get unemployment.
I doubt
we'll live outside under a bridge, and we'll get kicked out of the country, and we'll be homeless. Gee, what's going to happen to us?
Well, you've heard some of we call it paying on YouTube, where they just have a voice reading the text, and you can tell it's not a real person because the 音调不对.
Yeah, but that's just going to get better and better all the time. You never know.
Maybe.
But in any case, that's another subject
I'm
here.
not worried yet.
But we are going to talk about robots helping with English teaching in Japan, and again about this floating farm in Holland. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's read the entire contents of our lesson right now. Japan's English students get help from AI. A new kind of teaching assistant will soon be helping Japanese students with their English. Robots. From this year, the Japanese government is rolling out robots equipped with artificial intelligence, AI, to assist in English classes. This comes ahead of a 2020 change to Japan's national curriculum, which will require students to start learning English from age 10. The Japanese government has cited cost effectiveness as a major reason for its plan. The robots aren't as expensive as hiring native-speaking English teachers, and schools often can't afford to hire trained language instructors. The robots are also capable of helping each individual student with pronunciation, something human teachers don't have time to do. In addition to the robots, other tools are also in the works, like tablet apps and online lessons with native speakers. The project will cost around 250 million Japanese yen, 68 million NT dollars, and will be implemented in about 500 classrooms around the country. The government hopes that by using this innovative technology, it can boost the English skills of its young learners.
Rotterdam's floating farm brings farm life to the city. Dutch company Belladon is finishing up construction on the world's first floating farm in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. The farm is being built on a platform in the city's Mervenhaven harbor and will house 40 dairy cows that will be milked by robots. Although the Rotterdam farm is the first of its kind on water, it's part of a growing number of unconventional farms being constructed as more people move to cities. The farm's creators, Peter and Mika van Wingerden, conceived the idea after Peter visited New York City for work in 2012. While he was there, Hurricane Sandy struck the city. The hurricane crippled transport options, making it nearly impossible to deliver fresh food. Seeing this made the Van Wingerdens determined to move food production closer to consumers. Thus, the floating farm was born. The farm's convenient location in Rotterdam means lower transportation costs. Its cows will be fed with local food scraps, and solar panels will produce power for the structure. Overall, the farm is being viewed as a milestone for environmentally friendly agriculture practices.
Okay, everybody, let's talk about the contents of today's lesson. We've got a couple of news stories here in News Watch, all a part of our all-English lecture for today. So the first story is happening in Japan here. It's all about learning English as a second language. And here the title is Japan's English Students Get Help from AI. So these are Japanese students in Japan who are studying English. We're calling them English students. And they can get some help from AI, or artificial intelligence. Now, here the first paragraph says, a new kind of teaching assistant will soon be helping Japanese students with their English robots.
Cool.
Okay, so this is a new kind of teaching assistant. You might have your teacher in class, of course, and sometimes your teacher will have a helper, and that helper will be called the teaching assistant, sometimes referred to as the TA for short.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, they don't need to hire an actual teaching assistant. This is actually a robot. It will help those Japanese students with their English. These robots will help them improve their English.
Cool. I bet the robots aren't as cute as real people, though.
Well, you never know. They kind of make those things cute with,
I don't know.
artificial hair and skin and
sorry.
stuff.
Yeah, they're not very sexy to me, but I think they're trying to make them look more and more like people. Interesting, though. From this year, so starting this year, the Japanese government is rolling out robots equipped with artificial intelligence, or as we say, AI, to assist in English classes. When you roll something out, guys, it means you're making a new product. I think we get this verb phrase from the fact that in large factories, there are these long belts, conveyor belts, that keep moving the product to the next worker. I think that's where this rolling out something comes from. But we use it now to talk about rolling out a new program, rolling out a new campaign. Maybe you have an advertising campaign that you want to highlight how great your product is, so you roll it out. So we're going to roll out these equipment or these robots that are equipped with. So someone's already installed the equipment that they need. And of course, they all have this amazing brain with artificial intelligence. If you assist, it just means you help. So if you have a job as someone's assistant, you probably are busy trying to take care of anything that they ask you to take care of. You probably don't have your own responsibilities, although sometimes you can have your own responsibilities that have nothing to do with your boss. But in particular, if you're someone's assistant, you're helping them get their work done all the time.
And, of course, as you said, assist here is the verb, and these robots have artificial intelligence, and they're going to help or assist in those English classes. This comes ahead of a 2020 change to Japan's national curriculum, which will require students to start learning English from age 10. So, of course, they've decided this in the Japanese government as part of their national curriculum, or the curriculum for the entire country, what students are supposed to learn in Japan. And this change is going to happen next year in 2020. It's all part of the change to the curriculum, and that will require students to begin learning English from the age of 10. I guess they probably start learning English at a later time, but next year they'll start learning earlier. So you might be asking, well, why is the Japanese government doing this?
Yeah.
Why do they need to do this? There are plenty of foreigners who want to live in Japan and be English teachers or something like that. Well, here the Japanese government has cited, or they have mentioned, cost effectiveness as a major reason for its plan. If something's cost effective, that means it's worth the investment. If you buy some equipment and you use that equipment later to sell things and you make more money than you paid in the beginning, then it is cost effective. So basically, yes, they're going to get more bang for their buck. week. If they use this program here, it will be more cost effective. It will be more worth it. That's the major reason they're doing this. The robots aren't as expensive as hiring native-speaking English teachers. So there's that as pattern. They aren't as expensive as hiring English teachers who are from other countries like Canada, the USA, England, Australia, etc., etc.
I think English teachers living in Japan teaching English make quite a bit of money.
Yeah, you need a lot of money because it's expensive to live in Japan.
Yeah.
And so the robots will be cheaper in the long run. And, of course, a lot of schools often can't afford to hire trained language instructors. An instructor basically is a teacher, somebody who knows how to teach something like, I guess, how to play a musical instrument or something like that. But in this particular case, yes, indeed, some schools just can't afford those teachers, so they can afford these robots. And the robots are also capable of helping each individual student with pronunciation, something human teachers don't have time to do. Yes, you've got a teacher in the class. They've got, 30 students that they have to pay attention to. If you have these robots, they can help out the students one by one on their own time, and that seems to be quite useful here.
You brought up a phrase that I often hear said incorrectly, one by one and one on one.
Okay.
If you're taking a class and you have a tutor, the class is one-on-one. But one by one means there are a lot of people, but one person is helped at a time. But a one-on-one class is just you with a teacher, no other students. So be careful with that. I hear it said incorrectly quite often. It's a little confusing. Sorry about that. So they've got these robots. The robots aren't going to be as expensive as a real person. And sometimes the schools just can't afford to hire those expensive foreigners or instructors. You can be an instructor at any kind of school. I would say usually if someone has earned their PhD, though, you would call them a professor. But you can be an instructor in all sorts of things. Now, the robots are also able or capable. They have this ability of helping each student, individual student, remember, they're just helping one person at a time, with pronunciation. I wonder how good the robots sound. I bet it's somebody like us probably recording the voice for the robot. They'll still need real people to record the voices for these robots, perhaps, at least some of the sounds. And this is something that human teachers don't have time to do, is walk by each student and say, can you say that word for me? Nope, you're mispronouncing that. Oh, also, guys, while we're talking about pronunciation, I hear a lot of people say this word pronunciation. That's wrong. Pronunciation. The verb is to pronounce, that ow sound, pronounce, but the noun is pronunciation, so be careful with it.
It's weird, but that's an exception there. So yes, they can help you with your pronunciation. And in addition to the robots, other tools are also in the works. If something's in the works, that means they're making preparations for this. It hasn't come out yet, but they will in the future. And some of these other tools would be tablet apps, applications that you can use in your tablet computer. Also, some online lessons with native speakers. They're there on the computer. You just kind of call them up and, gee, teacher, I don't understand this preposition use here. Is it by or is it to or with? I'm confused here. Can you help me out? Well, I'll tell you, I'm a native speaker. I can tell you all about it. Now, the project of these robots, these AI robots, will cost around 250 million Japanese yen, which is about 68 million NT dollars, and will be implemented in about 500 classrooms around the country. Be used in those classrooms around the country of Japan. And the government hopes that by using this innovative technology, it can boost the English skills of its young learners. So here we've got the word innovative. That just kind of means new and advanced, using new methods, new techniques.
Yeah, something that's more advanced, maybe original. It can also boost the English skills of its young learners. To boost means to lift up, to increase. I know when kids are kind of young, they need something called a booster seat in a restaurant, for example. They can't quite reach the table if they're, 3 or 4, so they have those little booster seats. But if you boost someone's skills, you increase them, you raise them up so they're more advanced. We're going to talk about our next story, but first, guys, we're going to take a quick break. No Chinese teacher. And then we'll be back to talk about a floating farm.
Okay, let's continue now to the second news story in our News Watch unit. We're going to Holland, or the Netherlands, and we've got something going on in a city in the Netherlands. I think it's Rotterdam, about 500,000 people there, and Rotterdam's floating farm brings farm life to the city. Of course, if you live in a city, it's kind of difficult to experience farm life.
Yeah.
You have to go several miles to go find a cow or to smell the fresh aroma of chickens being raised on a farm. Of course, they smell
or pigs,
awful. But in any case, yes, indeed, if you live in Taipei,
I thought you were going to say the fresh aroma of green grass.
Or, I was going to say the fresh aroma of cow manure.
Ooh.
But I'm used to that smell. I'm from the country.
Me too.
I didn't smell it every day, though.
Well, I wasn't in the country, but we had orange fields, orange orchards where orange trees were growing. Plus, our high school mascot was a toro, which is a bull. And he lived at the school, and boy, did he produce manure, which is actually cow poop.
And you can use it as fertilizer, too. It's not so bad. But in any case here, if you're referring to anything in the Netherlands or Holland, you say Dutch. So we've got this Dutch company, Belladon. It's finishing up construction on the world's first floating farm in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. So most farms, of course, are on land. Maybe they're indoors, but in this particular case, it's actually a floating farm.
Cool.
It's actually floating on the water.
Yeah, just be careful. With the Netherlands, you can't say, I'm going to Netherlands. You have to say the. So this is Rotterdam, the Netherlands, or Rotterdam, Holland, is another way they talk about their country. The farm is being built on a platform. A platform is a flat structure in the city's Mervenhaven, this harbor, which is like a harbor in Kaohsiung or Geelong. They have harbors where ships can come in very close to the land and dock there, which means they stop. And they will house or take care of 40 dairy cows that will be milked by robots. Here with the robots again. Notice when we use house as a verb, we change the pronunciation. If it's a noun, we talk about living in a house, S sound. But if it's a verb, it's a Z. We'll house 40 dairy cows. So it's not a lot of cows, but actually it's quite a few if they're out there floating on the water. And of course, we won't have people or dairy farmers getting up to milk the cows or the rope to milk the cows early in the morning. That will be handled by robots. Actually, there's a lot of milking done these days by machines.
Yeah, that's been going on for many, many years, actually.
Yeah, it's hard to milk cows.
It's very difficult to do it by hand. And I think I tried it once when I was in first grade. No, we took a field trip to a farm once, and they let us try it.
Very strong hands.
Yeah, it was very, very difficult. It's a lot harder than it looks. Yeah. But, of course, nowadays, machines do all the work.
And if you don't do it right, the cows get mad and they kick you.
Yeah, so you got to watch out for that.
Yeah.
But again, these cows are being milked by robots. Milk here is being used as a verb. That just means you get the milk out of the animal. Although the Rotterdam farm is the first of its kind on water, it's part of a growing number of unconventional farms being constructed as more people move to cities. Yes, there are all sorts of different kinds of farms. I've heard about farms inside of shipping containers nowadays where they use LED lights and they can recycle the water and stuff like that. So yes, they're doing this as part of climate change and other environmental factors. So I guess you could describe these as unconventional farms, which would mean they're not traditional farms with, Farmer Brown, out there on his tractor wearing his overalls going out out there growing corn and stuff like that. No, these are alternate farms. There's also vertical farms being developed as well, but this is a floating farm. And they're doing this because more and more people are moving to the cities, and they want to bring that food closer to the residents of cities.
Now we've got the farm creators, or the farm's creators. Looks like they're a married couple, Peter and Minka van Wingerden. They thought of the idea, or conceived the idea, after Peter visited New York City for work in 2012. While he was there, unfortunately, a huge hurricane struck. And as you know, we name hurricanes. They're called hurricanes if they happen in the U.S. or on the western part of the world. But if they happen in Taiwan, in this area of the world, they're called typhoons. It's the same weather pattern. It's just a different name. Hurricane's the same thing. But Sandy was huge. One of my best friends still lives in New York City, and they were stuck inside for a couple days with no electricity. It was a little scary, actually. The hurricane crippled transport options. If you cripple somebody, usually we use it to talk about someone whose legs are no longer functioning or working. They're crippled, so they can't walk, and they're usually in a wheelchair. But if you cripple transport options, the way we get around from place to place, transportation, it means you can no longer use the bus system or the trains or maybe the MRT if you're in Taiwan, or a car. There was no gas. They'd run out of gas in New York City as well. So it was a mess. So people were finding it really hard to even get food. I have an emergency supply of food in my apartment because I'm prepared. But a lot of people, they eat day to day. And so people found it really hard to get food because none of the food trucks coming in from outside the city could make it in. So they couldn't deliver fresh food.
Right, the bridges were damaged and things like that, so these trucks could not haul the produce into the city. The transportation networks were crippled. Just like sometimes when it rains too hard, the MRT in Taipei can be crippled. I think it was crippled by a typhoon about 10 years ago or so. The line had to be shut down. The stations were flooded. That happened a long time ago. I don't think that's going to happen again anytime soon, but in any case, this hurricane that hit New York back in 2012 crippled the transport networks, and that made it impossible to deliver fresh food. Fresh food, maybe from New Jersey or Long Island or places like that. So seeing this made the Van Wingerdens determined to move food production closer to consumers. So they saw people in New York starving. Gee, where are we going to get the food? What are we going to do? Well, that's not going to happen to us in the Netherlands. We're going to work on some kind of production process to bring those farms closer to consumers. If flooding happens, they'll still be able to eat fresh fruit and vegetables.
So, in the final paragraph, it says the farm's convenient location in Rotterdam means lower transportation costs. Part of the cost of food, of course, is just shipping it in from wherever it's grown. Some of our produce here, we get it from out of the country, some other country. We import food in. We export food out if we're selling it to another country. We, of course, have the best mangoes in the world. So I know we do some exporting of mangoes. We have great fruit here, guys. Yeah. So a location here just means a particular place or location where something is positioned, where something is at. So it's a very convenient location in Rotterdam. Again, Rotterdam is the second largest city in the Netherlands, and it's right there in a province called South Holland. It's a major port city. So it's pretty convenient. It's just right there in the ocean water in the harbor area. Its cows will be fed with local food scraps. Most of you guys know that when cows eat, they have to go out into this big field and they eat the grass, or sometimes they're given straw. And but here, there is no grass or straw, so they're going to be fed with food scraps. Food scraps are leftover. It's just leftover food that other people didn't eat. Probably human food. They're going to eat some food scraps, and they're also going to get their energy or electricity from solar panels. So solar panels are those panels that they put on roofs or high up that soak in the sun rays, and that produces power, and that's going to give it electricity or power for the structure. Structure just is a word we use for anything that's sort of a building. So it could be big building, a small building, or maybe just like 4 walls, 3 walls. It's a structure, though.
Exactly, right. So some kind of facility. You could also say that, the floating farm here. So indeed, they'll feed those cows local food scraps. Like here in Taiwan, of course, those trucks come around and you can take out your kitchen waste,
Yeah.
They say that they feed that to pigs here in Taiwan.
Yeah.
But in Holland there, they'll feed them to cows there who live on this floating farm. And those cows can be milked, and you can have some Dutch milk there. And you can buy it at local supermarkets or whatever. And, of course, the solar panels will produce the power for that floating farm, that structure.
Cool.
So overall, in general, the farm is being viewed as a milestone for environmentally friendly agriculture practices. So generally speaking, people are seeing this floating farm as a milestone for environmentally friendly agriculture practices. A milestone just means some kind of achievement along the road to perfection. So indeed, it's a milestone. It's a significant event for producing food in an environmentally friendly way. Of course, a lot of farms have fertilizer runoff that pollute the environment and stuff like that. So this supposedly will work well with the surrounding environment and not produce a lot of pollution, but it will also produce food for people to consume.
Agriculture here is one of our vocabulary words, and it's just the science or practice of farming. You want to cultivate the soil, plant seeds, grow crops, and when the crops are ready to be harvested, you bring them in. You also use agriculture when you're talking about raising livestock, cattle, or raising animals for wool, like sheep. I guess we do eat the meat of sheep, sometimes mutton. Ugh, I don't. But animals also can provide food, like chickens provide those eggs for us. But agriculture is also the science of rearing or raising the animals. So it's not just farming, it's the animals that we use on farms either to help provide us with food or something else, maybe the wool that we use for sweaters.
Indeed. So there you have it. Those are our 2 news stories for today. And there's no time to listen to the Chinese teacher because we're not going to hear from the Chinese teacher. We don't welcome the Chinese teacher today. So that brings us to the end of our program. Thank you for joining us, and please join us again next time for another edition of our program. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.